Christoph sent out today?
No, that's embarrassing.
They're raising $50 million for incubator project for Threefold application.
That's cool.
That's very smart.
Well, I think we're gonna show some pretty cool stuff today that I think will have some pretty cool opportunity for that. I think today we'll actually end up doing kind of a little bit of a presentation at the beginning, because I got really, when you sent me the link for Umbrel, I spent a good amount of time working on it, and I got really excited about what it is and how it works.
I mean, that was great. Yeah, I mean, I envision the Threefold being part of that app store.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we would necessarily integrate directly into the App Store, but there's some really cool stuff that I think is really starting to become more apparent, I guess, in what's possible, which is pretty awesome.
I'm going to take notes then, right?
Yeah.
I think I told you about my real estate idea. So I'm working on a proposal for that. When I saw the incubator tweet from Christoph this morning, I thought it's time to resurrect that project.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll show this off more, but just as to kind of show you some exciting stuff while we're waiting here on the Umbrel side of things. Let's see where that.
Well, the idea is pretty simple. You just go out and buy a piece of real estate and then put the servers in the apartments. And
yeah, it really is. Somebody just asked about that in chat today. They were asking about Paradise Hills. Sometimes I think almost sometimes, Paradise Hills was a good blueprint, but I think some of the stuff we even talked about in the previous calls with the real estate example really provides a pretty good picture of what that is. I've been going through and doing chapters in the videos from previous videos. I've never had the like chapter stuff on YouTube where it tells you what each section is and like lets you jump to them before. The videos for the new Cloud Linux tutorial are set up like that, and I've been going back through and working on doing all the old videos like that so that information's easier to reference.
That's good.
But here, I'll show you this. So we'll show you kind of how we got to this point later, but this is actually a grid deployment here. And what's really cool about this is tied into my computer through WireGuard. So this doesn't have a public IP address. It doesn't have a public IPv6 address. It's not connecting over the planetary network. And it's actually, so you get to this and the only people that can connect into this Umbrel server are actually you and the people and anyone you give the WireGuard config information to. So that's pretty cool. But I've got all the stuff up and running on it. You've got the Gatia and I think that's how you pronounce that. And Nextcloud's up and running on it. I was actually really impressed with everything that Umbrel offers, just kind of as a very easy to use package. It's actually a one command install, which I was super impressed with.
Yeah, I'm downloading the Bitcoin database basically with all the transactions on an old iMac that I put in. That's how I found Umbrel. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought this was really
what
cool.
What you've done here is amazing.
Sometimes I feel like when I've been reading through Umbrel's documentation, it seems like they've gone through a lot of growth recently.
Okay.
A lot of their documentation seems to reference it as kind of this in a vacuum Bitcoin node software that like is for doing crypto payments and stuff. But once I got into it, the other stuff that is offered in here was way more interesting to me than anything that was Bitcoin related. So like we came in, I'll go down to the App Store here. And you'll see, I mean, you can really do a lot of stuff that's not even necessarily directly related to crypto payments. Like the Gatia, this is something I thought was really awesome, is it's a self-hosted GitHub alternative. So like the GitHub repos that I've been posting with like my scripts and stuff in them, I can host that in this Umbrel server, and then I can use it in the same way that you would use GitHub, but it's actually all my data is stored on my Umbrel, which is really cool. I was very interested. When I started reading through the documentation you sent me, I saw their whole mission is creating a new internet that's more private and secure. And I was like, hey, look, it's like a software project specifically built for the grid.
Yep. We could host everybody that wants to use this. We could be the capacity provider, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so right now, when I looked at kind of their mindset on deploying, they kind of look at this as something you would typically self-host, like in your home, running on either like a Raspberry Pi or something like that. But what's really cool is the Threefold Grid kind of gives you an alternative way to get around the centralization of cloud hosting, right? Because the smart contracts and the use of TFT and all of that allows it so that when you create a deployment, all of that interaction is only done between the user that's creating that deployment and the actual node itself. So, when I created deployments on the node, like this Umbrel, for instance, is running on the Salzburg GreenEdge farm. I didn't run this locally. I just did that. So it's running across the world for demonstration purposes, which is really cool. Because if you notice, like this isn't a video, this is live interaction, and it's running on the grid. So like all this snappiness and how it's running and everything is how you would actually experience it if you deploy this. So you can really, I already have that open. But yeah, but anyways, it allows you to take what Umbrel does and what they've created for people to self-host. It gives them an option to self-host it without having to set up a server in their home or install it on a Raspberry Pi or something like that. I've actually got an install script that can do a lot of this that I've been working on, and I'll have a tutorial up for this later today. But it's really cool because it makes Nextcloud super easy to deploy. It makes a lot of really interesting tools easy to deploy.
I have Nextcloud on a Raspberry Pi now in my home. So would you be able to send email then from Nextcloud?
Yeah,
Umbrella?
so there's some challenges with SMTP services on the grid that come with kind of the way that we use. Is my video still active? Yeah, okay. The way that we use residential connections at times, because so like for instance, my ISP, I host 128 public IPv4 addresses. I've got a /64 IPv6 block, so you can use public IPv4 and public IPv6 on my nodes. But if you actually try to host email on my nodes, you're going to run into a problem where what happens is it'll receive emails, but it won't send any. And a lot of the documentation you'll look, even when you go to look at just tutorials for how to do this in general, it'll tell you to test this if you're doing it at home. And the reason for that is that AT&T, who is my provider, actually blocks all outbound traffic on the SMTP ports. And I actually went as far as filing an FCC complaint against it because they actually had a few advertisements that specifically stated host your own email server on their on the advertisement blocks for the public IP blocks, which I was super frustrated with because I spent like a week trying to troubleshoot my network to figure out why this wasn't working, because I assumed that if it was advertised you could do it, that it would work. And even then I actually talked to some of their like head tech support people, and they said that the reason for it is because most people do not host email servers at their house, and if you do not secure your email server properly, people can kind of take control of it and batch send thousands and thousands and thousands of emails and spam and all that kind of thing. So as an effort to prevent that, AT&T blocks those outbound ports. But I have tested all of the GreenEdge farms and the Foundation farms, and all of them allow hosting of the SMTP servers. So I think at this point, your gold certified farms, which are often in data centers, are probably going to be your best option to host a service like that, which is truly going to be the case anyways. Because if you're doing those things, you're going to want a node that has, great uptime. Because if your email server's down when an email comes in, you just don't get it. It's not like you don't have that protection that you would have with Google with redundant servers, unless you set that up, of course. But providing yourself with that level of control by using a certified farm would just be kind of the way to do that. And then you'll kind of avoid some of those issues of having port traffic gets blocked and stuff like that.
Got it. And a certified farm, how do you get a certified farm? I know I'm in the Netherlands, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's one party here, even in the city where I live, I think. Host IT, Host IT services or something like that. They sell it.
Yeah, so certified nodes and a gold certified farm are a little different. A certified node is like the titans that you buy, and that's more of a certification on the hardware specifications of the node and the reliability of the node, and it comes with a warranty, things like that. So that you would use a certified node if you wanted to ensure that the hardware you were deploying on was really strong and going to be up and reliable. When you get into gold certified farming, that's a separate certification, and it requires things like a 99.8% uptime. It has to have a minimum of 2 internet connections that are redundant. It has to have 2 routers in the structure. I mean, it kind of creates farms that have the ability to host a highly available workload. And in the case of like the GreenEdge farms, which you can find just scrolling through the gateways, you can sort to GreenEdge by their domain names, which all say GreenEdge in them. With that being said, what you can do is all of these farms have multiple nodes, and these are all servers that are running inside data centers with ISO certifications. I can't speak to what certifications, but they're in real data centers. And that just kind of allows you can run multiple nodes. So like they have one in Salzburg, they have some in St. Gallen. So you could have an email server that is one of your Nextcloud instances in Salzburg, one in St. Gallen, make them redundant to each other. You can set up all kinds of really cool stuff with this. But yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay.
Thanks. Yes.
that got a little long-winded.
No, perfect. Thanks. That's answering a lot of questions, and eventually it might be required for our future if the World Economic Forum is pushing forward with their cancel culture, and I don't agree to be vaccinated, and I'm on central banking digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they might even block you from the internet, right?
Yeah, and
it could happen. It's not unthinkable anymore.
It would be difficult for very many projects to circumvent a country trying to block its citizens from the internet, because obviously that's going to have some very large implications in the realm of like fiber lines that leave the country and stuff. But this definitely helps. I mean, replacing something like Google Cloud for your photo storage with hosting an Umbrel server on the grid that you access over WireGuard. It provides a first step in a direction towards having an easy to use cloud where people are able to have sovereign control of their data. They're able to have, not necessarily an anonymous workload, but a private workload where they're able to really host this stuff and control who sees their data and all of that. With the WireGuard config, it would also allow you to have a system where like, I could share this Umbrel with my father that lives across the country in Colorado, and we could both connect to it through WireGuard, and then it still doesn't have any public IP addresses. It's not exposed to the overall internet, and it kind of just creates that LAN network between our house where we can have a shared collaboration space, share photos, do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what would you say is the use case for Threefold right now for having your own decentralized internet?
Yeah, so let's say if you were, I think the Twitter migration was a great example, getting your own social networks. I think looking at like, when you store things on Google Cloud, all of your data gets scanned for like copyright infringement. I remember a news story a while back that somebody was the actual artist that wrote a song, got a bunch of his work removed from his own Google storage thing because they scanned it and said it infringed on his copyright, because it didn't have a way to tell that was actually his data. And it ended up like being a big issue for them. So what Threefold lets you do is it controls the hardware portion of it. And I was really excited about this Umbrel question. It was actually CD Creek messaged me early last week and kind of brought this up, and I had actually seen it brought up, I think, twice before in chat, but I wasn't where I was at today in a readiness to pursue it. And once I got started here, what I really got excited about is, Threefold provides the hardware resources. So like on this Umbrel here, I've got, a couple hard drives attached to it. It's got the WireGuard network attached to it. It does have a planetary address so that you could connect to it from outside without sharing the WireGuard address. The Umbrel also in itself has the ability to be connected to over Tor from outside. And I saw all these features, and what was really cool about it is it gives you this graphical GUI that comes in at Web Console. You can even come back, and I mean, even the basic tasks are super simple in this, and it kind of gives you an opportunity to do this. Let's see, because you can even pull up Firefox and actually browse the web, which is pretty cool. And this is how easy it is to install applications. I mean, I was just mega impressed with this application, but it really empowers the technology of the grid that allows you to customize those hardware in that and create all of these resources, and allows you to take a software like this that before you had to have a server sitting in your house, even if it was just a Raspberry Pi or it was just an old computer that you had laying around that you turned into your Umbrel server. This gives you the other option. Let's say your house doesn't have reliable power. You're not going to want to try to run a server that's accessible from outside and is having data streamed to it that doesn't have a reliable connection, because you could have trouble with your hard drives. You could have all of that. The grid combined with the ability of the Umbrel software and WireGuard and all of that, it really lets you give that opportunity to people that don't have it right now. We talk about some of the projects we have going on in places like Africa, and that, yeah, I think a lot of those places, solar power, can always be a huge resource, and it takes a lot less power to run a Chromebook that can then connect to your instance on the Threefold grid of a Linux desktop with 32 cores and 256 gigabytes of RAM for you to do your development on or whatever you're doing. And all of that data gets stored on the grid, and you can access it at any point from any place. And then all you have to worry about locally is having that small, low power device that can be powered by, even if it is just solar or something like that available.
So it is a decentralized internet based upon blockchain, and that is the relation with Threefold TFT. So it creates the trust between the nodes through blockchain technology. I'm still trying to understand the relation between the blockchain and this use case you explained.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something I've actually been working on some posts about, because I know that's kind of an opportunity right now, is kind of how we differ from just kind of your average crypto project that's a coin that's kind of like a speculatory device and all of that, versus the utility token. So if you can imagine, so say we didn't have the coin and we needed to create a workload. At some point, someone would have to process a debit card transaction to take that money. And then that money would have to go through another system that would then locally process that transaction occurred and deploy it, and then tell the node to deploy a workload, correct? So it creates that kind of loop there. When you take the fiat system out of there, you don't have to have that loop. So what happens is then your local computer can say, hey, node 13, I want to create a workload. And node 13 says, okay, send me 10 TFT and we'll get that done. And then your computer just sends it to node 13. And all of that happens on the blockchain. So you're doing that all in a decentralized resource that's available and transparent. So you're not going through a centralized bank that then knows you're paying for the VM. The blockchain is the only thing that knows you're paying for the VM. And then that's where the smart contracts come in, is it allows the node itself at that point for node 13 to always be able to pull money from your wallet with that TFT in it and create a balance for it and ensure that billing happens. And then it allows the blockchain to monitor your wallet and make sure it has the funds to continue that deployment. So that's kind of where the blockchain technology comes in. I think a lot of places, you know, the blockchain is more of how it works and not the focus, right? And we're one of those because, you know, the TFT coin isn't the primary focus of the threefold grid. The coin is a vehicle that is used to allow for new technologies to work. So with the fiat currencies, the systems that are in place would not be able to be fully decentralized and autonomous. So adding that blockchain technology in kind of takes the technology to the next level.
Yeah, so you can really, and it's existing now with this, what all you just mentioned. You can really build your parallel society out of the what some people call the matrix.
Yeah. So, you know, and that's something that I think a great example would be, let's say you, you know, I know like CD Creek in the previous calls, we've talked about, you know, interacting with his grandson that's kind of across the, sorry, I'm having trouble getting to the X button up there. That's kind of across the country. And what, you know, and running the Umbrel, what you're able to do is you're able to do that, and then he can have the next cloud, his grandson can upload a photo to the Umbrel, and then with that, his grandson will be able to share those photos directly to him without them going on Facebook, without them going on Twitter, without them going onto the Google Cloud where they're crossing onto the server. And in an instance where that node is being hosted by CD Creek, he's actually, those photos are just going to a computer in his house. And Threefold would, you know, be allowing that to happen through just the software layer. I think, you know, a kind of an alternative way sometimes to think about ZOS is like, when you're using it yourself, is if you were to do a lot of this stuff in your home on your own, you would use a software like vSphere, VMware, the hypervisor software, you know, and you'd buy that software and it would create the orchestration layer that allowed you to deploy VMs and host servers and do all that on your hardware at home. Well, you know, that, and then, but you can also just throw a flash drive in it, boot up ZOS, and then you're able to go on the grid and deploy on your node that way, if you really want your data to be stored, you know, like in your house. And it provides some easier ways to do that, because as complicated as the grid is, if anyone's ever tried to set up their own VM hosting server in their house with something like VMware and throw an entire public IP block to it, and then set up VPNs and make it accessible from outside your house, like that all gets real complicated. I think sometimes that's where we lose, you know, kind of our mentality and our mindset picture of the grid's complication level, is because if you look at the alternative, it's actually far more complicated than even the grid is.
And you know, this is Billy, and that's where I'm at. You know, I've started and stopped this process so many times, you know, even though they tell you on YouTube, you know, it'll take us 30 minutes to do something of that nature. And I'm a real estate professional here in North Carolina. And, you know, like I said in some of my texts, that I'm a 40-year tech head, but I'm poor at doing it. And I've done some things, I've created some websites. And years ago within our industry, I've been in real estate for more than 25 years. In one of the states that I was licensed in, we were debating who owns the data.
Right.
And the National Association of Realtors, in essence, said that as you collect the data that as an agent, and you then pass that on to your association, your local board, and then they pass it on to, you know, the National Association, then realtor.com, which isn't owned by realtors, gets that information too to put on their aggregate site. We all share that data, we all own it. And we really have eliminated the property owner. And so back in 2005, something hit me. I was at a closing for another agent. She couldn't make it, so I was sitting in for her. And we sold this home within, you know, maybe a 2-week period. And this is even before, you know, the great financial crisis. And the people said, well, why do you guys get to make $40,000 and you never put a sign in our yard? And so that's when I started thinking about decentralization of the real estate information, the data that exists about the property. Ultimately, the homeowner owns it. And that's where I wanted to take it back to. But even as a broker, when you go out and you knock on doors and you collect that data, you then turn it over to your firm then turns it over to the association, your local board. They put it in the MLS, realtor.com gets it, and you lose out because the data is what's valuable. So what I want to do is bring that data at least back to the broker, the firm, the office, and, conjunction with advising the homeowner throughout their ownership, and have that data work on their behalf and not for realtor.com, Zillow. If you're able to do what you're saying with, a server sitting at home, and then you port that out, you aggregate it to these other sites, that doesn't necessarily have to be done by realtor.com. It doesn't have to be done by the local MLS board. And so, but my hang up is that I am not a great programmer, so even looking for someone to do what we have here with the grid would immensely help me out.
Yeah, so I actually think, like I said earlier, we've talked about the real estate idea a couple of times today, or a couple of times in these calls, and this is it. I love what's happened with these calls because something that was not an idea of my own at all. We talked about the real estate idea a couple weeks back, and we talked about how you could put nodes in houses as you're renting them or selling them to increase the value of those houses, and that kind of got my head ticking on, yeah, you put that node there, but how do you sell that to the person renting or buying the house, and do that in a way where you're not forcing them to want to buy a cryptocurrency, or you're not forcing them to want to have an investment, because that's something that I think is a missed opportunity sometimes, and it's something I think will help with the fiat gateways as they come to life from solution providers. Because right now with where the world's at, it's buying TFT means you're taking your cash and putting it in a I like to think of it almost like a gift card that's refundable, right? But sometimes that gift card also loses its value without you spending it. Sometimes it gains value without you spending it. It's not the most palatable thing for someone that's never done a stock, never done a bond, never invested, these people, and it takes a lot of knowledge. So, and I got to thinking about that, and then last week this week I talked about Umbrel, and it's kind of coming together into a solution that I think would work really well for someone like you. So let's say you have let's get a whiteboard here. All right. So let's say you have a couple properties. You've got, a home here, and you're trying to rent these properties out, and you want to integrate, technology into your sales strategy, because ultimately you have to want to do that, right? The Threefold Grid's not going to make your house have new technology benefits without your involvement in it. It's never going to be completely push button. There's always going to be some level of you having to manage your deployments, that kind of thing. You still do have to want to be a web host to do web hosting on the Threefold Grid. But what you could do is, so you set up, and let's say you throw a Titan in each one of these houses. And with
Hey, Drew, is everyone else seeing that? I'm not seeing your whiteboard.
Oh, can you not see the whiteboard?
Maybe it's me.
No, I think that's me.
I can see the whiteboard.
I can see it.
Yeah, it's me then.
Oh. Yeah, somehow you're not on the list of people here. Hold on. Let me back this up. Somehow it ended up as a collaborator so that you guys could draw on it too.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce Williams' idea. I used to work in Manhattan, and they had no MLS in Manhattan when I was up there. And 5 companies basically shared the data on 5 separate wholly owned servers that they all ran with their own IT departments. And I don't need to tell you how much money that was worth. And there's constantly, there's people very upset about the data because that data gets used in so many ways, and the owners of the real estate, they feel like they're getting ripped off, just like you know, you get that feeling sometimes with the big tech guys. They're selling your data and they're doing this. You get an ad for shoes, you know, when anyway.
All right. So
That
Billy,
market
are you able to?
is a huge market.
Okay.
If
So
you can
Billy, are you
figure out
able
how
to?
bust up the MLS? Realtors make more money and cost owning and transferring real
Let's
estate.
let's get back to the topic here.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Billy, are we?
I'm still not seeing it. I
Okay,
got
I
it.
think you'll be able to kind of get it without the visual demonstration. I'm not sure what's going on. It looks like there's a there may be an option that you have to click to view it, or if maybe you're on mobile, that might be the issue. It'll be in the recording though. But with that being said, so let's say you have 3 properties and you want to provide a benefit using the threefold grid that provides a next level of technology. What you can do with that is you put a node in each one of those houses, you provide internet to that node. And let's say you install something like Umbrel on it. Then you could actually, take a router, just your regular everyday Wi-Fi router, connect that router into the WireGuard config, and you can tell people, hey, this house has internet as an included amenity of the house. With that being said, it also has its own private server. And you would just give them the IP address or the domain name of like the Umbrel server, and then they can store their data on it, something like that. Or if you wanted to have another deployment on there that would be like your Umbrel from the marketing side of things, you could store all of your pictures from the home on a server that's actually a part of the house. And store your listing information, host a website that is like something that shows all the information, kind of your own miniature Zillow. And that can all be a discrete website that's running on that hardware that's actually sitting in the network closet of that house. And then you're in complete control of that data. So, no matter who actually gets upset about what you put in your ad or something like that, it can't be censored. And that's exactly kind of what CD Creek was saying, with disrupting that and that centralized control of the data. This provides you kind of the bones to do that. I'm not going to say that the threefold grid will give you a push button solution to create your own, registry. But it does give you the ability to create these decentralized locations. And real estate has definitely a huge opportunity for that, because you guys at each one of your properties, you have the opportunity to have an internet connection that allows you the ability to host more and more nodes. And having that infrastructure positions you as kind of the forerunners on being able to deploy not just, a node in a house, but actual networks of farms that are set up to be reliable and provide, that next level of decentralization.
Well, Drew, and that's the exact vision that I have. So that's exactly it. It's the decentralization is what I'm concerned about. And I think that in the run up to where we are today with real estate, years ago it was the argument about who controls the data, and we weren't happy with Zillow, because it was all that information that we did the farming. We knocked on doors, we pulled in the clients, and we were asked to give that information over to our local boards, and then they just kept porting it out to anybody and making money, and then turning around and selling services to us. So we go out and do the work, and all that data is aggregated from the 1 million+ realtors that they then turn around and sell the services. So it doesn't need to be more robust than what you explained. And what happens is that my program then creates the relationship between the homeowner and the broker, who that's where the relationship has always been. They become a true advisor throughout their ownership. And then when they're ready to sell, that relation has been solidified. And there's a cost reduction in my program that basically allow them to take that entire equity that has built on the increased value of their home with them, instead of paying that to a real estate broker in the process. And so those are the things that I think that a lot of people would understand if you had the chance to sit down and talk to them and take them through a module. And so I also have it where I'm going to license out the training process to brokers and say, hey, part of this program will give you a node or two, or something to that nature, where when they get into the program or offer this program to their clients, and they can also get a node at the same time. But the beauty of this is that you can still do traditional real estate. And at the bare minimum, the program becomes a marketing funnel. Even if people don't accept the program, you get to knock on every homeowner door and say, hey, these are the options you have when you go to sell your real estate. Either you can do it the traditional way, or you can be proactive and start listing before you have a need to sell. And there's protections in that process that I have developed. And just to show that I'm not the only one doing it, there's a company called MV Realty who pay people for the future privilege of selling their home. And they have over 30,000 clients in that program right now.
Yeah, so I think definitely what you're talking about, the grid definitely provides the bones for that. There's
Yeah.
a long way to go to get from having the bones to having an integrated software interface that makes it easy for people. But I think Umbrel here, I think this could be a big step, running this in WireGuard, being able to attach it to your home network so that any device that connects to the Wi-Fi can automatically access the Umbrel. That's something that's possible here. Because what you can do is, like for instance, I use an ASUS Wi-Fi router for the home side of my network. It has the ability to connect to WireGuard as a basic structure. Something like OpenWRT can do it, pfSense can do it, and then your router itself is connected to the VPN. So then if I type in the IP address of the Umbrel, I don't have to connect anything on a new client that's in the house. It's going to go to the router. The router knows how to get there, and you can create a tunnel between your deployment, no matter where it's at in the world, and your home farm that's both encrypted and private.
Yeah, that's exactly what I need.
But
Now-
I pulled up here. Oh, go ahead.
Would each user have to have a WireGuard account?
No, so it's a single WireGuard network. So we might be able to get into a little bit of deploying here in a minute. But basically what happens is you have the option to create a WireGuard network that exists between as many of your deployments as you want. And then you have the option to output the WireGuard config so that you can add external devices to that network. So for something like this, I think this is a great example. Let's say as a real estate developer, you want to take cryptocurrencies for payment. Sometimes that can be a super frustrating process. And let's say you want to do that in a very decentralized way. You could install and you've put a node in each one of your houses. You could install one of these BTC Pay servers that allows you to accept Bitcoin payments and will sort those to your wallets automatically through a web interface. So you could actually have a portal on your website that allows you to take payments, and then the actual infrastructure for hosting those payments would be hosted on your nodes, and it could be hosted on a node that actually exists in the house that you're renting, so that it's all self-sustaining infrastructure. Really what you're doing is you're giving your house the ability to have a digital presence of its own by putting a node in there. Let's say you wanted to deploy a WordPress website with all of your pictures, listing information, history documents. You could do repair records. You want to create this Bible that's related to that house so that when you do go to sell, you're 100% prepared, and you want to store it all in a safe way. Create one of these and store it all on your Nextcloud, and then make that Umbrel the sovereign storage point for all the data, and you put it on a place like one of GreenEdge's farms. You're going to have a super reliable deployment that's not dependent on your local internet. I think I showed earlier, I installed a Home Assistant. I could hook my smart devices to this and have a centralized management portal that I'm controlling where they connect. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but like, let's say you buy a LED smart bulb, one of the ones you screw in and then you connect it to your Wi-Fi. Those actually connect to external third-party servers over the internet just to function. So there's somebody that knows all the time that your lights are on or off. But Home Assistant actually allows you to direct those to your server and allow it to control them. And then you can do, even with that, you can actually, you could even theoretically run like Pi-hole, which is another application that you can easily install with this, and run your own name servers and everything like that through Umbrel as well.
Excellent.
I need to step away for like just a couple seconds here. If anyone has any questions, maybe Scott could answer for a second.
Sure.
No.
I will say
Right.
there is a way to find a gold certified farm, and we're zooming back in time a bit here. This was Bart's question. If you go to the dashboard and you go to the farm section, there's a filter that you can add for gold certified farms. That'll show you all of them. There's actually one in the Netherlands. It's the Terminator farm. It's run by a guy named Theus. And so if you wanted to deploy something on a gold certified farm local to you, that's a Terminator farm. And you can see the other gold certified farms. We just have the GreenEdge farms and that one farm in the Netherlands for now.
I'm starting to understand the core use case of what we are discussing now is sovereignty, to take back autonomy from anything that is always trackable, traceable, and sensible on the internet, right? That is really the overall use case.
Yeah, for sure. The one tagline that we use to talk about Threefold and what the technology enables is putting people at the center or back at the center of their digital lives. So instead of having a digital identity that's fragmented among a plethora of big tech controlled platforms and many different accounts and many different stores of data, the idea is being able to give each person their own slice of cloud capacity that they fully control, where they're able to store their data and run their computations in a way that is fully transparent to them based on open source software, and can happen also in a way that's relatively deterministic. So you say, I want to run this program based on this open source code, and you have a high level of assurance that that is what is actually executed by the node that is running that software, especially if it's a node that you're also owning and controlling in your home or office or whatever.
And having your own node, it basically means, so the node is what is the blockchain. And you just presented a Bitcoin node on a Threefold server, if I understand fully correct. I'm still trying to get my mind wrapped around the difference between the Nextcloud server I'm currently run on my Raspberry Pi here in my home, and what is the difference between what you're offering, so to say, the Threefold node with either a Bitcoin application within the umbrella, I think it was what you just presented, or a TFT kind of wallet connected to that, I think. Because what I understand from the explanation is that you use the TFT to basically to run transactions. Which does that mean you're pretty much your own bank? Is it like that, or?
So yeah, that's a great question. I guess in the same sense that any blockchain has this idea of being your own bank, like yes, you control your TFT in the same way that you control another currency. When we talk about nodes on the grid, there's maybe two things that need to be separated, and one are the nodes that run the Threefold blockchain, which allows the Threefold grid to operate. So those are separate. They can be running as deployments in the grid. They can be running on different servers. So the Threefold chain is run by software nodes, just like any blockchain, and those can be running on any kind of hardware. And then on the Threefold grid, we also have hardware nodes, which are computers. They can be as small as an Intel NUC, like some of the Titan nodes that we sell are very small box, or they can be nodes that go in a rack, like what you see behind Drew there. And these are pieces of hardware that people have booted up the Threefold operating system 0S on this hardware, and thus have made the capacity, compute storage network capacity of that hardware available to anyone that needs this capacity for all the kinds of purposes that we've been discussing, hosting data, running computations, maybe creating this next gen real estate network, whatever your interest is, you can do that using the capacity that's on the grid. So as an individual, you can be a provider of capacity or a consumer of capacity. If you're providing capacity as a farmer, you are earning TFT, and to consume capacity, you have to spend TFT. And you could also be both, right? So some people like Drew or like myself, we have nodes in our house that we operate and we earn from those nodes, and we also spend a part of that TFT that we're earning running some deployments on those nodes for our own personal purposes. Drew's got some different public services that he operates to that you can go and play with, like Mastodon and things like this. So those are the basic concepts on the grid. We kind of have this like triangle thing where there's people and there's the hardware, and then there's the threefold chain, and these things are all talking to each other to enable the end experiences.
Yeah, I really like that. I wanted to add on. So you talked about you have Nextcloud running on your Raspberry Pi, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm sure a big part of tell me about your motivations for that, right? Like, so what made you want to do that versus just creating a drive on Google Drive?
Yeah. So we are a community in the center of Netherlands. By now it's around 600 people. And we faced in the lockdowns here in the Netherlands. So we were not allowed to sit in a restaurant, for instance, without being vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a binding factor for some people to get together and say, oh my God, in what direction is our society going now? And now we're talking about vaccination, but the next thing is that you are censored for anything at all, right?
Right.
So we were, sorry, I just walked up the stairs. My wife
No
was
worries.
starting to cook. Sovereignty and autonomy, that's what we're looking for as a group of people. We start permaculture, growing our own food. It's one of the projects we're doing. And another project that I'm part of is autonomous IT, autonomous infrastructure. One of the things we're looking for is literally walkie-talkies, a network of walkie-talkies. If we are quite close to where the third world war is starting here in Russia.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a day drive with the car right now from where I live. And we're heading towards very, very surrealistic times. Nothing any one of us ever imagined like 5 years ago. Well, Aldous Huxley did with A Brave New World, and a few other philosophers did in the past, that we could ever enter such a complete surreal world. And so we're trying to say, okay, how can we become sovereign? How can we be autonomous? If we are locked in 15-minute cities where you are not allowed to move further away than a 15-minute ride on your bicycle, and how can we still communicate? How can we pay each other? How can we save data and share knowledge and information?
Yeah.
While everyone is completely censored. And the idea of the home is, of course, really nice, where you put the home as the autonomous entity. But my question about a bank is that in an ideal world, each individual, each person that's born into this world is their own bank.
Right. Yeah.
And
We stop giving our money to everybody else.
Yes. Yeah. So this is part of that whole philosophy. And we see it as a start. As a community,
I really like
Yeah.
I really like that you're here and that you brought that up, because I think what you guys are doing provides a very uniquely capable entity to do kind of what the threefold grid is wanting to show people is possible. So let's skip the whiteboard this time. We'll just use paint, and hopefully that'll work better. So you said you got about 600 people. So in a group that size, you guys are going to need, you know, a lot of services. So, you know, everybody needs email, everybody needs some sort of social media, everybody needs some form of cloud file storage so that they can get stuff from work while they're at home and stuff from home while they're at work. You know, all of those services. And right now, creating a entity that provides all of those services for your group is very complicated, right? Because you're going to need all these different applications. And then somebody in that group is going to have to be the person that does it. So what you can do though is, so let's say your group wanted to establish their own structure. So you wanted to have an email service, you wanted to have like a Mastodon, you wanted to have a PeerTube and a Funkwhale. You know, you guys can all put all your music on Funkwhale and share it with each other. All your videos on PeerTube, you can share them there. But you also want to have, you know, you could even run a Plex server so that you guys can stream the movies you're sharing with each other to your phone, something like that. So what you could do is, you know, like you've got 2 farms there in the Netherlands that I know of that are actually DC based farms. And both of them have public IP addresses, which is super awesome. So you've got some local capacity providers that are really giving those big services. So you could deploy, you know, some nodes or some workloads on, let's say, we'll just call this public IP farm 1. And this is going to be where you store all of your stuff that's shared by everybody. So like, you know, your email server, all that good stuff. And you can do this by having, you know, multiple nodes in that farm running redundant servers that provide those services in the same way that you would set those up typically. But then as well, you can also have each of your members can have, you know, something like a Titan that's in their house. And ultimately you can install applications on those Titans that you can then connect to your public IP farm. So, you know, each one of these people could have their own single user Mastodon instance, but everybody, you know, and then each of those relays to a Mastodon instance that's running on the public IP farm, so that everybody has, you know, a highly available solution that relay is then going to save all their posts to that Mastodon as well. So, you know, if you make this one double redundant, highly available, everything like that, you know, all of that data ends up here. So theoretically, if someone didn't want to set up redundancy on their home node for their Mastodon, they could rely on it going through the relay and going there. Probably not the best strategy, but you could do it. But with that as well, you know, with things like the Planetary network and the WireGuard network, you're able to make this private. So you can run your own small private, you know, data distribution network, similar to the concepts you would be familiar with like a corporate network. So I think we're all familiar with getting a company laptop that has VPN access to the company network, right? Threefold can allow you to basically do that, but actually have, you know, a VPN entrance exit server, you know, essentially at each house. So it really just allows you to build these networks of virtual machines that are autonomous and sovereign. You're not interacting with the company, you're interacting with the device itself that's deploying your hardware. And it allows you to connect them privately with secured networks that use encryption, and it allows you to take those, you know, what are ultimately just Ubuntu server VMs, and use software layers like Umbrel to provide services. You know, if you had an Umbrel server running here at the public IP farm, you could actually run the BTC Pay server that allowed all of your group to accept payments, and that centralized server could process payments and sort payments to individuals' wallets. That's something, you know, that you would have to set up through BTC Pay server. But the grid gives you the ability to orchestrate hardware from all over the world that's hosted by thousands of people. And you can, if you're just doing something that you just want to, for instance, you know, say you're a software developer and you want to deploy a dev environment to see if your code works in a certain Linux version, you can do that on any node you want, because that's probably not something you're going to be too concerned about, you know, finding a specific farmer that you trust. But, you know, if you're trying to host a BTC Pay server, you can go and network with your local community and find a Threefold farmer that's rented space in a DC and has, you know, multiple internet connections supporting them. So Threefold just really provides that orchestration layer and that ability layer, in addition to for the hardware. And then the software options are just limitless, because anything that runs in Linux will run on the grid.
Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit more of an understanding about future capabilities. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so I'm going to put out a tutorial on Umbrel, and I think it's a really great example because I'm going to use Terraform in it. we're going to do the whole thing start to finish. I mean, I'm going to basically create a new Windows VM, and I'm going to deploy an Umbrel server from there with all new phrases and words and transfers, and we're going to do it as if somebody had never touched Threefold a day in their life. And I think once we get to that point and someone's able to deploy their own private cloud server where they can run Nextcloud and Katia and Wiki.js and all this other stuff, and they can see that functionality and they can get there without having to spend a month or two getting there, I think we'll have some pretty cool stuff on our plate.
I could run that on my own farm
Absolutely, yeah.
and pay for it, obviously.
Yeah, but you actually, and it doesn't even require a public IPv4. Like I said, the deployment I just showed off has no public IP addresses. So you don't have to pay for the public IP, and that actually makes it able to be run on any node on the grid.
And you could replace that farm one, the scenario you just went through with, say the broker being the central farm one there and nodes off of that, right?
Absolutely. And that's, in your example, it's the same thing. You would have, maybe your farm at your house, or you hook up with a local farmer like me that's got, huge bandwidth and capacity available, and you can run your centralized resources there, but you can also then have a node in each house, and you can set up like a backup of all that data in each house so that you actually have a decentralized solution where you have all your data available on a server, on websites, everything else, and then you have 7 discrete different geographical locations with different internet connections where your data backs up to. I mean, like I said, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely. I like that.
Now, Bart had mentioned they were growing their own fruit, right? And a question for you, Drew, that Bitcoin Pay server connects to the Lightning node, which has very low cost, transactions going back and forth. So that could be, if you had that Umbrel piece in place and it's backed up and you sort of have the TFT piece over here running all of it and servicing it. And then you can have the Lightning node, that community could have its own currency.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So
it's just unbelievable. I mean, it would be Bitcoin, but it's low cost. Lightning node just cuts the fees.
I mean, there's actually a step even further than that, which is the regional internets, where someone like Bart's group could actually establish their own regional internet. I just saw one being established in Generty. I think it was DocNet. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'll be honest there. But you establish a regional internet, you get your own token, and then, all of your community members provide capacity to that regional internet, consume capacity on that regional internet, and you're in control of it top to bottom, coins, DAO, everything. You have your own internet.
So
yeah, that's it. That's the dream that we want to achieve. And then you have the circular, what we call circular economy. We're looking at a few projects like Circles Ubi from Berlin that come with something like that, but that's owned by some people we're not really sure about. That might be some kind of universal basic income pilot for what World Economic Forum is actually wanting to achieve with the central banking digital currency, and we don't want to onboard that and be switched off later. So we want to really be autonomous and really have it all, build it all ourselves, not just grow our own food, but also build our own IT infrastructure and payment systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you guys did a video or a call on the regional setup, right? I think I recall that some time back.
Me and Scott didn't, but there was a community call on regional internets that was like a team hosted call.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, we are right on the hour. I think we've made a lot of really great discussion here. If anyone has any other quick questions.
Hey, I appreciate both you and Scott, and a lot of information. Scott, I apologize for not getting back with you from about a week or two ago, but a lot of things going on my end, and I just try to make this as easy as possible. But this call helped, and everyone else who has helped me through the process. So thank you, guys.
I just want to reinforce that, Drew and Scott, we really appreciate what you guys are doing, and these calls just help keep our feet on the ground and our heads in the game, so to speak. Especially
and-
non-techs like me. I mean,
Man, I can't tell
my head
you.
almost explodes sometimes.
second that.
All the different terms that you use, but it's starting to get in there.
Absolutely, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate everybody that comes. We're seeing more and more attendance every week, and like I said, I never heard of Umbrel before CD Creek had showed it to me. I have never had a day in my life that I've been involved in real estate to come up with any of these ideas or any of that. So just by coming and bringing your scenario and what you need help with and what your ideas are to the call and letting me and Scott help you with how you can turn your idea into a functional grid solution is really helpful, and it's helpful to both sides here. So I really appreciate everybody that takes the time to come.
Anytime. We right back at you. All right, thanks, guys. See you next time.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
A lot. Good day.